Hello, and welcome to April. And the first book I have finished in April is Washington Black by Essie Adogan. And I don't have anything to show you because I actually listened to it on my phone. Because I guess if this pandemic has one tiny sliver of a positive aspect, it's that it finally forced me to download Libby and figure out how that works. So, great. It was this extreme of a situation that made me do that. Okay, so like, I can't go to the library, and I got to have my audiobooks. So anyway, Washington Black. So it's historical fiction, and it's set in like the 1830s, and it's about a guy who, well, I mean, I say guy because he's a boy, and then he's telling the story at the beginning, but then he's telling the story when he's grown up, whatever. So he was a boy, who was a slave on a plantation in Barbados, and then ends up sort of catching the attention of the new master's brother, who is like a scientist, naturalist, engineer, and also an abolitionist, but who kind of takes him under his wing a little bit. And they end up escaping the plantation, and then it's about his adventures in life as it goes on for the next few years. I will say one thing. Only about 4 or 5 years pass as the story goes by, maybe 6. And like Washington, that's the main character, really does seem like more time has passed. Like, the way that he talks about his childhood and like his time with Titch, who was this character, makes it sound like it was more than 3 or 4 years ago, even though it was supposed to be only 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, I don't really see a reason why the author couldn't have just made it a longer period of time pass. Like, there's like no real reason. I mean, he's in his like mid to late teens later in the book, and I don't know, I think he comes across as older, and I think it would make more sense for him to be older. I mean, literally maybe only 5 years older. Like, you know, just say it's been 10 years, and then I would kind of buy the way everything goes down a little bit more. But that's, I mean, it's a minor complaint, but it's just kind of an odd thing that kept taking me out of it, where I'm like, it's only been 3 years, dude! Why are you just like, everything has changed? So a lot of the story kind of theme is about, like personhood, and also about like the relationship between parent and child, and often, or like guardian and child, which is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, and just like what we owe to each other, I guess. I thought it was really good. It's like a little bit more literary than what I tend to read, I think, but I really liked it. I think I picked it up because, you know, because it has a character who's a naturalist, actually several characters who are naturalists, and it has just some elements here and there that I probably read in the summary and went, yes, I like the idea of them going to the Arctic. I like the idea of, you know, this involving like sea life and stuff like that. So they're like, let's invent the aquarium. So yeah, I thought it was really good. And I thought it was a really good way to start the month off strong with a good book. And also Libby is super easy to use, so no complaints there. And I think that's good enough for now. But yeah, I would say that it's going to be kind of an odd experience as the weeks go on, with the library closed, and that's where I get most of my books. I still have a stack of them to read, but it's back, it's right there on the table. But I'm gonna run out at some point, so yay! But I have Libby. But I will say that I do not want to get ebooks on there because, like, sorry, but I am not reading a book on this screen. Like, I love my eyes too much, so audiobooks only, but kind of rambling a little bit, but that's okay. So we'll just take it one day at a time, I guess. and get back to you with my next book. Hello. I have finished Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man. Yay! Okay, so I just finished this morning, and it was really excellent. It's a classic sci-fi about a world where there are a lot of telepaths, and a man decides that he wants to murder someone, and the thing is, though, that for like several centuries, I think it's about that long, nobody has succeeded in committing a premeditated murder, because somebody who's a telepath is going to find out about it. But this guy thinks he has a plan, and then the rest of the story follows him attempting to get away with it, and a telepathic cop, Powell, attempting to prove that Reichs murdered someone. And it was pretty wild. Like, I just thought it was a lot of fun. It was fast-paced, it was fun to read, there were a lot of different characters, a lot of different just, like, scenes. I mean, duh. But it wasn't repetitive at all. And it went through everything very quickly, and, like, I just thought it was a lot of fun. I really liked the dialogue, too. I thought it was really snappy, and, like, there was a lot of kind of back and forth flirty dialogue between various characters, and I liked Powell as a character quite a lot. He was the cop, and the whole world of how the Espers, that is the telepaths, work was really interesting. The main reason I wanted to read this book was because I'd read that some of the telepath concepts in this book were what inspired the way telepaths function on Babylon 5, my favorite TV show, and I could totally see how that was the case. There's like an organization the telepaths all have to belong to, and there are rules, and telepathic like information is not allowed in court. It's not admissible in court. So that's part of Powell's problem, is it needs actual evidence that Reichs killed the guy, rather than just saying, listen, I know he did because I read his mind. But it's frankly wild. The last kind of fourth of the book is just what? Like, just some really strange things happen, but it was really fun to read, and I would, like, totally recommend it. Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun, and I understand why it won the Hugo Award. And this cover has not ceased to just be hilarious to me. Like, what is this thing? Who is this supposed to be? What is happening? I don't know. But it was a great book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Good job, Bester. According to the short little biography of Bester back here on the back, it says he set the science fiction field alight in the 50s with 2 novels. And I read both of them, and I'm like, is that all the novels he ever wrote? I hope not, because I would love to read more novels by him. Also short stories. He wrote a lot of short stories, apparently, but those are a little bit harder to track down. But that's okay. That's okay. I can just read The Star's My Destination again, I guess, because I totally forgot what happened in it anyway. Anyway, whatever. This was good, and I recommend it if you want some old sci-fi. It's a lot of fun. Record of a Spaceborn Feud by Becky Chambers. This is a really pretty cover. I like the red and blue of space. Okay, so this is the 3rd book of the Wayfarers trilogy, and I really, really liked it. Of course I did. I mean, that's not surprising. I knew I would. I would read books on books on books set in this universe. I just find it so, like, it's really interesting. I love the world building. And also, like, Chambers, like, I just like the way she writes. And I think if you're really don't like books that don't have heavy plot, not for you. But I can dig one every once in a while. So, yeah. The basic idea behind this book is that it's set on the Exodan fleet. And the Exodans are the humans that did a mass exodus from Earth on these generation ships, and then didn't end up finding a planet, so they've just been living on the ships ever since. And of course some of them have left, but a lot of them have stayed. And all of the characters in this book live on one of the ships of the fleet. The Astoria, I think it was. I literally just read it. You'd think I'd know. I think it's the Astoria. Asteria. Fine. The Asteria. And they're all kind of trying to find meaning. I don't know. It's sort of... They're all kind of trying to figure out where they're going to go with their lives next in different ways. And they're all human, except there is one major alien character who comes to the fleet to see what it's like there, and as an academic. So it's a little different in that way, because the other books had more alien characters in them. But it's just really interesting to read how they live on the fleet, and like what they do and how they've got everything structured. And I liked all of the characters pretty well. I especially liked Sawyer and Ias. And yeah, it was really good. It doesn't have any of the characters from the other books. The closest connection is that one of the characters in this book is the sister of the captain of the Wayfarer. So she does mention him and his ship several times. Like, that's part of it, but no one ever shows up. And it is interesting because those little bits that you do get, it's just kind of like, oh, well, I know who those people are, and I know what they're up to, and I like understand why they are in whatever she's talking about, whatever certain things happened. But that's kind of it. But like, I kind of wonder, because I never really heard anyone talk about whether you need to read all 3 books in order. I mean, I think that would be my recommendation, if only because, like, obviously they were written in this order, so like there's kind of a progression of development in the writing and like in the world building. Like, in order to, and also just this book, for example, will mention certain aliens and the way they do things, and like without a ton of explanation, because you're kind of meant to understand some of that already from the earlier books, and I remember most of it, so it was alright. But I would definitely recommend this one. It was nice. I think it might have a bit more in common with the first book than with the middle one. The middle one I felt like the middle one had more of a plot, and I did really like that, but this one was real good too. Like, it does feel like it's going somewhere, I guess, eventually, once you get there. And, I really, really liked it. It was such a nice thing to read. Hello. I have finished reading A Legacy of Spies by John le Carré, which I read as an audiobook on Libby. So, I don't have it to show you. This one is from 2017, so it's like the newest book of his that I've ever read. He did publish a book last year, though, so there is an even newer book that I have not read. But the idea behind A Legacy of Spies is that the children of a few people who died in some of the earlier books kind of come out of the woodwork to make a legal case against the circus for the deaths of their parents, and Peter Gwillem is dragged in, and they ask him a bunch of questions about, like, particular, well, specifically about the events of a spy who came in from the cold and some stuff that led up to that. And it's interesting. So first of all, I would say you should not read this book if you haven't read A Spy Who Came In From the Cold or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, because kind of the climax of both of those books is spoiled by this one, and the endings. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, I've read both of those books, but it has been a while, especially with Spy Who Came In From the Cold, where I, like, kind of don't remember all the details, but I was getting there by the end of this one. I was like, oh yeah, alright, so there were those two guys, and anyway, so I kind of was getting it. But one thing I'll never forget about that book is how it ended. I'll tell you that I can remember, because it broke my heart, because it was the first John le Carré book I ever read, so I wasn't up on the whole, oh, they all end tragically, although this one doesn't. Shockingly. I thought it was gonna. I was like, this is gonna, but it actually had sort of a happy ending in a weird way. I quite liked this book. I liked the examination of, like, whether they were at fault for these people's deaths. And there's just some interesting moments where I was like, actually, some of the things that they did or they asked people to do for them were pretty terrible, weren't they? Like, I don't know. It was interesting. I don't know. I liked Gwillem. Like, he's a character who has appeared in a number of the other books, and I never found terribly interesting, but he was interesting here, I thought. Like, we got to know him a bit better, and of course, it's set quite a few years later, so he's older and is reflecting back on his life and all of this stuff, and I enjoyed it. It was good. And it was short. I would like to read some more le Carré this year, though. It would be nice to read one of his books that's, like, older and, like, maybe a bit more action-packed. But, we'll see. Hello. I just finished Invisible Planets, which is an anthology of contemporary Chinese sci-fi in translation, put together by Ken Liu and largely translated by him. Well, I guess it was all translated by him. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, so it is what it says it is. It's 13 sci-fi stories and 3 essays on Chinese science fiction in the present day and in the past. All of the stories were originally published within the last 10-15 years. I don't know. It was good. It didn't blow me away, I don't think, but I think it tended towards, I don't know, towards science fiction visions that were slightly less interesting to me than sometimes short stories are, but I did really like some of them. Let's see, I liked, oh boy, I cannot pronounce this lady's name, Xia Jia. I liked her stories. I especially liked 100 Ghosts Parade Tonight. That was interesting. I really liked Ma Boyong's The City of Silence, which was, I thought that one was really interesting because it was about censorship. And I thought, like, from my perspective, as somebody who spends a lot of time on the internet, that's kind of the angle that was interesting to me to think about it in terms of, because just the idea is that, like, there's a certain list of healthy words that people are allowed to use, and you can't say things outside of that, or write things outside of that, and just, like, how small this makes people's lives, and how the list keeps being decreased because people will find ways to say what they want to say, even just using the small number of words that they're allowed to use. Like, by combining, say, 2 words, to mean a different thing. And it's just like, I really liked that one. That was really interesting. Hao Jingfang, I liked her. I think Hao Jingfang was a woman, I don't remember. But their stories I liked. They were a little bit more fantastic. Invisible Planets. Actually, I liked Invisible Planets less than I hoped I would, because it's supposed to be kind of a science fiction version of Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino, but like, you can't make that comparison because Invisible Cities is just like beautiful. It's poetic. It's, I don't know, it's so much. Folding Beijing was a really cool idea, where Beijing, the city, has been like engineered so that it actually has three different versions, and like all of them exist within a smaller space. So like the first is where all the rich people live, and there's like 5 million people living in that city, and they get to exist for like 24 hours, and then the whole thing folds into a different way, so then you get like the second Beijing, but they don't get to stay awake for as long, and then the third is the shittiest one with the most people, and they don't get to stay awake even as long as the second. And then yeah, so it's an interesting story about a guy who gets a job to travel in between the three. It's illegal, but because you're not really supposed to do that without permission, but he does it anyway, and it was just really interesting. And I also liked, well, there were 2 stories by Liu Cixin, and one of them, unfortunately, I was hoping for more like new content, but one of them was just a modified chapter from the 3-Body Problem. I mean, I loved it. It's great. But I was like, oh man, really? But I've already read this. And then the other one, Taking Care of God, was an interesting concept. And then the essays were interesting too. So that was cool. I know that Ken Liu has another anthology called Broken Stars, I think, which I would also like to read. I'm not sure if that's contemporary or if it's older or what. I don't know what the deal is with that. But, you know, maybe it's, I'm hoping for some even greater variety, because like I said, there are 13 stories here, but each author, like there's less than 13 authors, right? So it's not a huge swath of different things. Like they're all highly educated, and all of the stories are like ones that have been published and like won awards, etc. So, you know, it would be interesting to get an anthology that's maybe of older Chinese short stories, for example. But I don't really remember what Broken Stars is, but I want to read that. But anyway, I don't even... this was good.